God-centered marriage. Tonight is lesson 3, and this one is simply, can we talk? Have you been married any time at all? See, I can already hear the little giggles out there that we all know. Sometimes when you hear, hey, can we talk? It's like, oh boy, here we go. My hope is that we can maybe rewire that thought process. But all right, so let's be honest for a second. 4 words, 4 simple words that have the power to sometimes make your stomach drop faster than a roller coaster. You know what they are. Your spouse walks into the room, gets that look on their face and says, we need to talk. Instant panic sometimes, right? Your brain immediately starts running through the highlight reels of everything you might have done wrong in the last 72 hours. Or did I forget something? Did I say something? Is this about the thermostat again? We laugh, but here's the thing. Most of us have been there. And most of us, if we're being really honest, would admit that communication in marriage is hard. Like, genuinely hard. Not just occasionally awkward, but sometimes deeply frustrating, confusing, and even painful. We're going to work on communication, conflict, and connection. Here's a stat that may not surprise you. Researchers and marriage counselors consistently report that communication problems are the number 1 reason that couples need counseling. Number 1. Not money, not the in-laws, not even whose turn it is to do the dishes. Though those were pretty close in the lineup. It's communication. And I think the reason it's so hard is because we do a marriage thinking, I love this person. We get each other. This is going to be easy. And when real life happens, stress happens, kids happen, busy schedules happen, and you're 2 people living in the same house, sleeping in the same bed, and somehow feeling completely disconnected from each other. Week 3 of our series, Building a God-Centered Marriage, and if you've been with us, you know we've been building the idea that when God is the center of your marriage, everything changes. How we love, how we forgive, how we grow together. Week 1, Week 1, we were talking about the foundation. Week 2, we talked about intimacy and connection. And today we're getting into something that is incredibly practical: communication, conflict, and connection. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. God has not left us without guidance on this. The Bible's not silent on how we talk to each other, how we handle conflict, and how we actually listen. The wisdom in Scripture on this is so practical, so relevant, that it could have been written for the couple sitting in marriage counseling just last Tuesday. Whether you've been married years or you're newly engaged, whether your communication is pretty good or it's been a rough season, this, I hope, is for you. So let's get in. Healthy communication. Don't let the sun go down. We'll start with a healthy communication. I will take us to Ephesians chapter 4, verses 26 and 27. This is Paul writing to the church in Ephesus. And he's something so simple yet so profoundly difficult to actually do. In your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. Okay, well, let's just sit here for a second. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry. Don't exactly think this means that stay up till it come up. Now, I know some of you have heard this verse your whole life, and maybe it was one of the plaques in your parents' kitchen. I want to really think about what Paul's saying here, because there's more going on than just a bedtime rule of married couples. First, notice what Paul is not saying. He does not say, don't be angry. He is saying, in anger, do not sin. That's really important distinction. Anger itself isn't the problem. Anger is a normal human emotion that you're going to feel. Your spouse is going to feel. That's not a character flaw. That's being a human being. The question is, what do you do with it? Healthy communication in a marriage doesn't mean you never get upset. So take a breath. It means learn to handle the upset in a way that doesn't damage the relationship. So what does that look like practically? Let me give you a few things. First, name what you're feeling before you react. This sounds, but it's incredibly powerful. Instead of just firing off whatever comes to mind when you're frustrated, pause for just a moment and ask yourself, what am I actually feeling right now? Sometimes that looks like anger. Sometimes it looks like anger is actually fear. Sometimes it's hurt. Sometimes it's exhaustion. When we can name it, you can communicate it. I'm actually mad at you. I'm scared. That changes the whole conversation. I'm not angry. I just put in a long day and I'm tired. It changes the conversation. It gives the other person an understanding. Of course, now remember, on the other side, one day and I'm tired, that's not the time to start poking buttons. Okay. Love you guys. Proverbs 12:18 says, the words of the reckless pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Your words in a marriage have the power to wound or to heal. That's not a small thing. Third, did I say second? Did I read second? I'm sorry. Let me back up. Let me go back to second. That might make more sense. Watch your words, Paul said. Do not sin in your anger. And one of the easiest ways we sin in conflict is with our words. We say things we can't take back. We exaggerate sometimes. We've talked about this before, but we get this one-up mentality. If you're going to say that to me, then I'm going to say this to you. If you're going to go that far with this, well, hold on, cupcake, because we're here. Right? Come on. We can be honest, right? We go for the jugular because we know exactly what will hurt our spouse the most. And in the moment, it might feel satisfying, but the damage it does to trust connection is real and it's lasting. Say the sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never. All of us know or should know that that's a lie. A lot of times words are a lot more than physical hurt. They stay with you much longer. Now we'll get into Proverbs 12:18 so I don't lose track of where I'm at. The words of the reckless pierce like a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Your words in a marriage have the power to wound or to heal, and that's not a small thing. Third, and this is the one that gets people, don't let things fester. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry. Now, I want to be careful here because I don't think Paul is saying you have to resolve every single conflict before midnight or you failed, okay? Sometimes you need to sleep on something. Sometimes you need to cool down before you can have a productive conversation. What Paul is warning against is the pattern of letting things pile up, of going to bed angry night after night, of stuffing things down and pretending they're fine when they're not. Because here's what happens when you do that. And verse 27 tells us, you give the devil a foothold. The word foothold in original Greek is topos. It literally means a place, a space, or a territory. When we let unresolved anger and resentment sit in our marriage, we are literally handing the enemy a piece of real estate in our relationship. We're giving him room to work, and he will use it. Healthy communication is about creating a culture in your marriage where things can be said, where feelings can be expressed, where conflict doesn't have to be avoided, because you've built enough trust and safety that you can actually talk about the hard things. Here's a practical challenge for you this week. If there's something that's been sitting between you and your spouse, something unspoken, something that's been quietly building, make a decision this week to bring it up. Not in anger, not as an attack, but as an invitation. I can feel married couples puckering right now. It's okay. We're going to get through this together, okay? Hey, can we talk about something? I want us to be on the same page. Don't give the enemy any more real estate in your marriage. Quick to listen and speak. Okay, so we talked about healthy communication, creating the kind of environment where real conversation can happen. But let's be real. Even in the healthiest marriages, conflicts still happen. You're going to disagree. You're going to have moments where you are absolutely convinced you are right, and your spouse is absolutely convinced that they are right. And you're both looking at each other like, how are we even the same species? How do we fight fair? How can we handle conflict in a way that actually moves us towards each other instead of further apart? In James 1, 19 and 20 is one of my favorite passages for this because it's so practical, it almost feels like it should be something that we put on our refrigerator. My dear brother and sister, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to becoming angry. 3 things, and they're in that order for a reason. Let me tell you what most of you actually do in conflict. We're slow to listen, quick to speak, and fast to get angry. We flip the whole thing upside down. We're already formulating our response before our spouse has even finished their sentence. Wow, we're ready to go. We're not listening to understand. We are listening to respond and let them know how wrong they are. And the moment we feel like we're being criticized or attacked, the anger kicks in and the conversation goes sideways. Sound familiar? Me too. So let's break it down. Quick to listen. This means conflict resolution starts with a genuine desire to understand your spouse's perspective. Not just to hear the words, but to actually get where they're coming from. This requires humility. It requires you to set aside your need to be right for long enough to really hear what your spouse is trying to say. Here's something that might help. In the middle of a conflict, try asking this question. Help me to understand what you mean. Help me to get there. Or you can even say, this is what I'm hearing. You're a lunatic. No. Only kidding. Is this what you're saying to me? Because sometimes when we are listening to just respond, we are only picking the parts that get us riled and ready to go. It's just like trying to sometimes decipher a text message from somebody. You can't hear emotion in a text. So you can look at a text and know that you know that you know, I know she ain't talking to me like that. Right? I know he ain't got the gall to say that to me. Now, on the other end, the dude was just like, hey, I think this. Ladies, for the most part, we're not that deep. Okay? Most likely what you're reading, that's what we mean. 4 words that can completely change the temperature of the conversation. Help me understand. Because instead of assuming you know what your spouse means, and usually when we're in conflict, we assume the worst, you're inviting them to explain. You're saying, I want to understand this, and I don't want this turning into some screaming match between us. Let's try to figure this thing out. And that alone can de-escalate a situation faster than almost anything else. Slow to speak. This is about the pause. The intentional, deliberate pause before you respond. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Steve, I'm not a slow to speak kind of person. I'm more of a rapid fire kind of person. I understand that. Some of us process out loud. Some of us are wired to respond quickly. But James is in conflict, especially the pause is your friend. And I've learned that over being able to be married a long time, that in our earlier years, if I even thought that I still heard a rumble from the other room, I'm ready to go. Like, I know you ain't still going. Right? Come on, you know what I'm saying, right? And she could do the same thing to me. Huh? When you're in an argument, right here, you can hear mouse fall. Like you can hear, I don't care if they're in the base or the 3rd floor. Let them run their mouth. You hear it. You hear you, right? Huh? Yeah, plenty. That's why I'm talking from experience, man. Right? The way to flip that, though, is even if in my mind, and we don't really do this anymore, which I'm thankful for, but sometimes, right, there's, sometimes you're like, you guys just deal with me part-time every day. So, hallelujah. Anyway. But if I'm in that moment where I feel like I got it and I'm going to go, I just go do something else. Just stop. Just stop. Because all I'm going to do is go gas on the fire that's already burning, and it's not worth it. Because the more this elevates, the more this thing is going to that you wish you would not have said. If anything, there's a few things I would love to be able to take back, but I can't. There's anything that I can look back at of our early years that I could do, but I would eat so many words that I allowed to my mouth because of anger. Because I'm going to one-up you. You are not going to say that to me. Again, I want to continue to reiterate, I am not talking to people that could potentially are in abusive relationships. Not talking to you. That is something that you need to get help and talk to somebody about. Completely different. Not talking to you. Before you say it, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? and is it necessary? Not every thought that comes into your head in the middle of an argument needs to come out your mouth. Some of those thoughts need to stay right where they are. Slow to becoming angry. Notice, James doesn't say never angry. He says slow. Because he knows, again, we are human. But he also knows, and verse 20 makes this clear, that when we let our anger drive the conversation, we don't get anywhere good. Human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. In other words, when you're in full-on active anger mode, you're not going to say the right things, make the right decisions, or move towards the right outcome. Let me give you a practical framework for conflict that's really helpful. I found this. It's called the XYZ approach. Instead of saying, you always do this, or you never care about how I feel, which are attacks, you could say, when X happens, I feel Y and I need Z. So instead of you never help around the house and I'm exhausted, you say, when I come home and the kitchen is still a mess after a long day, I feel overwhelmed and unsupported. What I need is for us to figure out a plan together. Same issue, completely different approach. Instead of an attack, make it a team effort to figure out how to resolve the problem. One's an attack, one's a resolve. Here's the big idea on conflict. The goal is not to win the argument. Surprise. The goal is to win together. You and your spouse are not opponents. You are teammates. And the moment you start treating conflict like competition where someone has to lose, you've already lost. Because the relationship pays the price. Conflict handled well can actually make your marriage stronger and build trust, deepen understanding, a level of intimacy that you can get that you cannot get any other way. Because when your spouse knows that they can bring the hard stuff to you and you're going to stay in it with them, that's safe. That's security. That's the kind of marriage that people dream about. Listening and understanding. We've talked about healthy communication and conflict resolution. Now I want to spend some time on something that I think is the most underrated skill in marriage: listening and understanding. Proverbs 51 says this: a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. This is one of those verses that is so simple, it almost sounds too simple. Like, yeah, obviously being gentle is better than being harsh. Thanks, Solomon. But I want us to really think about what this means in the context of marriage, because I think there's something here that goes deeper than just be nice. The word gentle here in the Hebrew carries the idea of softness, tenderness, even vulnerability. A gentle answer is not passive answer. It's not a doormat answer. It's an answer that comes from a place of security and love rather than defensiveness and fear. Here's what I've noticed in marriages, and maybe you've noticed this too. The tone of conversations often determines the outcome before the content even gets changed. You can say the exact right thing in the exact right tone and completely blow up a conversation. And you can say something imperfect in a tone that's communicating, loving, and saying the conversation stays that way. Tone matters. Delivery matters. The way you listen The posture you bring to the conversation communicates volumes to your spouse before you've even said a single word. If you go to somebody, your spouse, and say you want to talk, and they look at you and go, oh, you've set the tone on that conversation already. Right? We need to talk about this. Oh, I bet we don't. Let's just sweep another thing away and just be happy. So let me talk about what real listening looks like, because I think we often confuse hearing with listening. Hearing is passive. Listening is active. Hearing is just the sound waves hitting your eardrum. Listening is leaning in, making eye contact, putting down your phone. Yes, I said it again. And actually engaging with your spouse and listening to what they're saying. Here's a challenge I want to throw out there. The next time your spouse is trying to tell you something, especially emotional, something that matters to them, try this. Before you respond, before you offer a solution, before you share your perspective, just back of what you hear. Just let them talk sometimes. Sometimes may come in and she's had a day at her job and she just wants to vent. She doesn't need me to solve the problem. She just needs to what's been going on. And truthfully, 40% of what my wife says from her work, I don't know what she's talking about. She's in the medical field. I'm not going to give her advice. People will die. They just will, right? I'd have doubled that. They would have died. Well, problem solved. No, anyway, no. Kidding. Anyway. There's one of those places I should have paused. But anyway. Slow to speak. Yes. But, again, sometimes, right? A lot of times it's pretty obvious. What do you think about this? Or I need your opinion, right? That will cue you in to say, okay, they're wanting me to actually talk back on this and give my perspective or my thoughts or whatever. Sometimes our spouse just needs us to be a sounding board to get it out of them because they've had to play nice at work all day. And now they get to come home and just be real. And blah. I mean, not for you guys. You get to do it everywhere, whether you like it or not. Have a good day at work. Hi, how are you? Yeah. This does a few things. It slows the conversation down in a good way. It shows your spouse that you were actually listening, and it prevents a huge amount of conflict that comes from misunderstanding, from thinking you know what someone meant when they actually don't. Here's something that might sting a little, and I say this with love. A lot of us, especially those of us who are problem solvers, we listen to fix. Our spouse starts talking about something that's bothering them, and our brain immediately starts with some type of, okay, here's what I would do. Here's how I would fix it. This is what I would do. And our spouse is sitting there thinking, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to keep your mouth shut and listen to me. This is one of the most common disconnects in marriage. One person needs to be heard. The other person wants to help, and both end up frustrated. A gentle answer sometimes isn't an answer at all. Sometimes it's just, that sounds really hard. For my wife, I just say, oof, that sounds terrible. I don't know what you're talking about, but it sounds awful. A gentle answer, I just read it. And I think that actually a picture of how God listens to us. In Psalms 34:18 says, Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Not the Lord fixes the brokenhearted immediately. It means close, present, and near. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your spouse is just be close, be present, let them know they're not alone. The second part of Proverbs 51 or 15 and 1, is just as important. A harsh word stirs up anger. We've all experienced this one. You're in a conversation, it's going okay, and then one word or one turn or one eye roll, and suddenly the whole thing escalates. It's like throwing gasoline on a fire. And here's the thing about harsh words. They don't just stir up anger in the moment, they leave marks. Over time, a pattern of harsh words in a marriage creates an environment where people stop being honest, stop being vulnerable, stop bringing the real stuff because it's not safe. And when that happens, you end up with two people living parallel lives in the same house, politely coexisting, but not really connected. That is not the marriage that God designed for you. God designed a marriage to be a place of deep knowing and being known, a place where you can be fully yourself, messy, complicated, imperfect, and still be fully loved. And that kind of marriage is built one conversation at a time, one gentle answer at a time, one moment of real listening at a time. So here's a practical step for this week. Ask your spouse one question and then just listen. Not to respond, not to fix, just to understand. The question is this: is there anything that you've been wanting to tell me that you haven't felt like you could? I'm going to say that one more time. Is there anything you've been wanting to tell me that you haven't felt like you could? Now, on the other side of that, the hard part is just listen. Not get defensive, not explain yourself, just receive it. I'm either going to cause stronger marriages. Anyway, that one conversation could open a door that's been closed for a long time. All right, I'm going to try to bring it home. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. We've talked about healthy communication, creating a culture in your marriage where things can be said, where you don't let anger fester and give the enemy a foothold. We talked about we talked about conflict resolutions, being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And remembering that the goal is never to win the argument, but win together. And we talked about listening and understanding, how a gentle answer can literally change the direction of a conversation, and how real listening is one of the most powerful gifts that you can actually give to your spouse. Here's the thread that runs through all of this. Communication is not just a skill, it's an act of love. Every time you choose to listen instead of react, every time you choose a gentle tone instead of a harsh one, every time you choose to stay in a hard conversation instead of shutting down or walking out, which was my go-to. Nope, out, see ya, not doing this. Then you come back and you just go, all right, we good yet? Oop, nope, nope, nope. Not by that face, we ain't good. The other person also hasn't resolved it with you. You need to respect that with them and allow them that moment to get through whatever it is that's been going on. Just because you feel better doesn't mean you're both in a better place. Don't push them because, well, I feel fine. Well, good for you. I don't. Okay, then let's talk this out. Let's get us on the same page. Again, because I'm not trying to win on my own. I'm trying for us to win as a team. I want to be honest. This stuff is not easy. But what you're saying is you matter to me. This relationship matters to me, and I'm not going anywhere. It takes practice. It takes patience. It takes a lot of grace. Grace for your spouse and grace for yourself when you get wrong, because you will get it wrong sometimes. I get it wrong sometimes. We all do. Failure, that's being a human being. Here's the good news. You don't have to figure this out on your own. The same God in marriage is the God who walks with you in it. He's not distant observer of your relationship. He is at work in it. And when you invite him into the conversation, when you ask him to help you listen better, speak kinder, and love more deeply up, he really does. Maybe something that you should do if you know it's going to be an intense conversation is let's pray together before we talk about this. Maybe that also reminds us that, hey, we invited Jesus to sit in on this one, so we might want to watch our mouth. I'll give you 3 very practical things to take home this week. 1, have the conversation. You know what it is. There's something that's been sitting between you and your spouse, something unspoken this week, not as an attack, but as an invitation. Hey, I want to talk about something because I want us to be close. I don't want this distance that this thing has caused. 2, practice the pause. Before you respond in a moment of conflict or frustration, take a breath. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say going towards each other or further apart? That 3-second pause can save our argument. 3rd, listen to understand, not to respond. This week, in at least one conversation with your spouse, make it your only goal to understand them, not to fix, not to advise, not to share your perspective, just to understand. And then tell them what you heard. This way, they know that you are part of the conversation. These aren't magic fixes, but they are seeds. And when you plant seeds in healthy communication consistently over time, you grow something beautiful. I'll close with this. We're in week 3 of God-centered marriage. Next week, we're going to talk about something that makes all this possible: forgiveness and grace. Because here's the truth. Even when we communicate well, we still hurt each other from time to time. Why? Because we're imperfect people in an imperfect world, and sometimes we get it wrong. And the glue that holds marriage together through all of that, through the hard conversations and the moments of failure and the times when we said the wrong thing in the wrong tone, is forgiveness. We'll get into all of that next week, and I really hope that you'll be here. But for tonight, remember, can we talk? Not just as a question you ask your spouse, but as a communication, as a commitment to one another, a commitment to keep the lines of communication open, to keep choosing each other, to keep building something together that reflects the love of God. YouTube, thank you for being with us. If you have any questions or comments or thoughts, please put them in the comments. We do read them, and we will get back to you. Be blessed.